Are the Trayvon Walker on the block rumors true? I'll give you some facts and I'll let you decide here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What she said. That's right. She said it's your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars, and that's a fact. And we thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. And a reminder, you can find it wherever you get your podcast, whether you watch or listen. Make sure you tap into that location each and every day so you do not miss an episode. An episode today that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's right. Terms and conditions apply and all of that stuff. Terms and conditions also apply when you listen to here on Locked On Jaguars, because here's what we're going to talk about. What were the Jags thinking? We spent all of this time since James Gladstone got hired and Liam Cohen got hired trying to figure out, okay, what do they think of the roster? Their recent roster additions, including one this morning with another offensive lineman, let you know exactly where they thought this team was deficient, were you right or wrong. We'll evaluate all of that. It is lying season. And we're going to talk about that right in the middle of the show, kind of connect all of this stuff together, because we're actually starting the show today at the very top with something that may be a lie. And that is the fact that people have put out, or at least a person has put out, rumors that the Jacksonville Jaguars are interested in trading Trayvon Walker. Okay, so let's go through it. First and foremost, I don't know if it's true or not. Second, I haven't heard anything on the home front. I got some people that I know very well that I've called around, and they haven't heard anything either. They all think it's ridiculous, right? That doesn't mean that something didn't happen. And what I mean by that something is it's lying season, man. People can throw little rumors out about who they want, and people can throw little rumors out and maybe a curveball here. And I'm not saying that the Jaguars have done this, but my experience tells me that what if someone says, okay, let's throw people off and throw this out there. Let's just assess Trayvon Walker's value. And that's the part that makes me think that people really got this wrong. But let's just assume for the case, and I'm not going to, some guy with the last name of Campbell. But other than that, I'm not going to get too deep into who he is and whether or not he's credible and all of that stuff. I had never heard of him, but I'm not going to impugn his character and his work integrity and say that he's lying. I'm not. Somebody might have said it. Somebody might have done it and say, let's just start this rumor, because let's make people think we're trying to get rid of Trayvon and that we want Abdul Carter. And somebody we'll make sure that they jump up in front of us and take Abdul Carter. Let's make people think we're really looking for an edge rusher when we're not. That could possibly happen. Doesn't hurt anything. What really does happen is this. You can't get any closer almost to Trayvon without me finding out than the person that I spoke with. And I asked them if they heard anything. They said, no, we ain't heard nothing. We thought you might have heard something. No, I ain't heard a thing. I haven't heard a thing. I haven't heard anyone say that Trayvon Walker is going to get traded. Anybody around here, anybody that I consider credible. But it doesn't mean that someone did not purposely say this or put this out or tell somebody who told somebody who told somebody. It also doesn't mean that it's true. So I use deductive reasoning to try to figure out whether it's true or not. And right where it starts is the people that put it out. I'm not going to just all put it on one person, but a lot of people that seem like they wanted to quote the initial tweet or the initial post on the X app. When I start getting phone calls from people that I know in the industry that are usually well-versed in all of this stuff, some of them on the Locked On Podcast Network, some of them not on the network, I'm like, okay, I got to address it, because these people that I call for information are the ones that are sending me DMs like, hey, what would it take? And I'm thinking like, man, listen, I don't think it's true. The reason why I don't think it's true is because Trayvon Walker is going into his fourth year. They can exercise the fifth-year option on Trayvon Walker. I think that's like the average salary of a whole bunch of people. I don't know if it's quite like that. I don't think it's like the franchise tag. I believe with the fifth-year option, they'll have to pay him a nice chunk of change, right? At worst, he's still on a rookie deal. You play him this year, right? He's also one of their 5 best players, and I don't think he's fifth. Trayvon Walker can play. Trayvon Walker's a game wrecker. And for those that say, well, he may not be the pass rusher that people want, we watch too many games and he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. The dude has 20 and a half sacks the last 2 years. 20 and a half. That's 10 per year. He got 4.5 sacks as a rookie. And because he was picked number one and the dude behind him, Aiden Hutchinson, was playing like an all-pro immediately, everyone looks at him as a bust. Trayvon Walker has the same amount of sacks his rookie year as Jared Verse, and he was rookie of the year on the defensive side of the ball. But he was picked 19th, so the pressure doesn't come along with him. That comes along with Trayvon, and then the ghost of Aiden Hutchinson is sitting right behind him. The funny part about it is when the Jaguars made the playoffs as a rookie, no one really talked about the fact that they thought Trayvon was a bust. And then when his actual numbers went up, when his sack numbers went up and the team faltered, when Trayvon's sack numbers went up, but the team didn't make the playoffs, that's when everybody wanted to bellyache. Something I said when they got drafted, it won't matter who gets the most sacks. They're going to be judged by whether the team wins or not. So when Detroit didn't go to the playoffs and the Jaguars did, you didn't hear a whole bunch of that stuff. You only heard it the following year when the Jags did go to the playoffs and Detroit went to the NFC Championship game, and Aiden Hutchinson had those numbers that were very similar, at least sack-wise, to Trayvon Walker. Then Aiden gets hurt this year. He looks like he's headed to an all-pro and maybe even defensive player of the year. Well, Trayvon played well too, but Detroit was thriving and the Jaguars were struggling, right? Here's where you have to take this with a grain of salt. Because when those people keep talking about Trayvon Walker, someone actually said that the Jaguars would take a third-round pick for a dude that has 20 and a half sacks the last 2 years, who's on a rookie deal that still has a minimum of 1, maybe even 2 years left, depending if the option is claimed. That is the most ludicrous thing I ever heard in my life. There are other people that say, okay, if he wants this year's second and the player and the first-round pick in 26, we do it. Now you're talking. Right? That's more like the value that we would expect to get from a 24-year-old ascending pass rusher who coaches around the league rave about for the fact that he's a game plan wrecker. So while I don't know what's true and what's not, listen to the people that keep saying it and listen to the idea of what the compensation is, and that'll tell you whether or not they heard that crap from somebody who really matters, and that is the Jaguars brass. There ain't no way in the world the Jaguars taking less than a first-round pick in the first half of this draft for a dude like Trayvon Walker. And anybody thinks that, they are crazy. And if it happens, I will come on here and I will put my best suit on and I will tuck the jacket inside of the pants and put my shoes on the wrong foot and play crazy, because you would be right and I would be wrong. It's lying season. Don't believe everything you hear. We'll discuss that in segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in and making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time picks. Listen, curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater. It's easy ticket shopping. All of these great, amazing deals, super deals, peace of mind, because you know where your seat is, because you get views before you buy with no surprise fees at checkout. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price. What time is it? Man, it's game time. Rolling along here on Locked On NFL, where it is your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. We just talked about Trayvon Walker rumors. I'm not calling anybody a liar, but what I am telling you to do is use your judgment and see what's attached to the thing that you're trying to figure out whether it's truth or not. And when you talk about compensation for a player like Trayvon Walker, half of the stuff I've been reading is an absolute joke. So it makes me not even believe that these things are true. However, it could have happened, but there's reasons why people put stuff out during this time of year. One of the things that I brought up in segment 1 is this. because we want you to think that we're going to be looking for a pass rusher or edge rusher like Abdul Carter or Shamar Stewart or somebody like that. And while you're looking over there, Trayvon's going to still be on this team, and what you think is going to happen doesn't happen at all. You know, because there's thought that one of those quarterbacks, at least one of those quarterbacks, is going right early. There's thought that it could be an offensive lineman that goes early. There's thought that a defensive tackle, especially with New England, who sits in the catbird seat because they have a quarterback. The two teams in front of them don't, in Cleveland and Tennessee. So the Giants are also there. There's three teams that need quarterbacks, and three of them three of the top four need quarterbacks, right? So there's this hope that what happens is two of those quarterbacks go in those first four picks. Seems unlikely, but it also might be probable because those teams need quarterbacks and teams tend to overreach for that position, right? And if that happens, that means that the next two players are Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. It could force some teams to move up, and the Jaguars will sit right there and go, okay, thank you. That ain't where we were going anyway. We're going to get the guy that we want to take. It can really do that, right? So I don't put anything past anybody when it comes to this draft stuff. But in my opinion, I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm not even calling anybody a liar. I think Trayvon Walker is going to be on this team for the next 5-6 years. That's just my opinion. I don't think anyone that looks at the Jacksonville Jaguars roster and says that Trayvon Walker is the problem. There could be this issue, though, where you look down the line and Trevor's making a bunch of money. You look down the line and you look at right now and Josh is making a bunch of money, even though I think Trevor's extension kicks in next year. And the Jaguars in the past, under previous administrations, I always thought they waited too long to hold on to people that they knew they weren't going to get that they weren't going to re-sign. And they did not maximize their value. I thought they did it with Yannick Ngakoue. I thought they did it with Josh Allen if they wanted to move on. And let me tell you something. Trent Baalke was off the record telling a bunch of people for a long time that he thought Josh was the number 2 pass rusher. Ask anybody in the media, now that Trent's gone, I'll tell you, and they will say they heard it come right out of his mouth that he was the number 2 and he needed the number 1 on the other side of him. And that's why I always thought that they were going to trade Josh Allen. That is something that everyone that I know who's credible in the media industry, they heard that here in Jacksonville. So when I was trying to trade him that whole time, it was because I thought the dude that was in charge would never pay him like a number 1 because he thought he was a number 2. That's why I said it. It would make sense that if that's what he thought, that's what he would have done. But what did he do? He turned around and let Josh have a season where he had 17 sacks. Now you're dumb if you don't pay him, right? So they paid him, and that's what happened. So there's some people that believe that the Jaguars aren't going to be able to pay everybody, right? They're not going to be able to pay everybody. And if they could get some production out of a rookie to go on the other side of Josh, and this is why I tell you that usually teams don't have 2 max guys at one position, unless you're the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Unless you're the Bengals. The Jaguars did address the cornerback spot, but they're not paying Jordan Lewis like the same money that they're paying Tyson Campbell. So normally what happens is you got 2 guys, the top 2 guys in a tandem in one room. One of them may make a whole bunch of money, and the other one is either on a rookie deal or he makes the money in the middle territory. Usually you don't have that. So maybe someone is thinking that the Jags are trying to get ahead of it a little bit and not going to pay Trayvon Walker a whole bunch of money because they're already paying Josh Allen that type of money. And Trevor's extension is going to kick in. And they're going to have a whole bunch of other people that are eventually, especially if they start winning, they're going to come up and they don't think that they could pay him. I don't think that's the case. I think the Jaguars could perfectly pay Trayvon Walker because they could give him an extension right now and that extension doesn't kick in for 2 years if they put it on top of the 5th-year option and add that into it too. So what would happen is you'd say, okay, we can give you a 3-year, sort of like Derek Stingley just did. We'll give you a 3-year extension, Trayvon, for $90 million. That's $30 million a year, right? But really, we're going to have you for the next 5 years, and whatever's left on your contract right now, which I would say, what does Trayvon make? 4, 5, 6, maybe $6 million a year right now, or $6 or $7 million a year. And then whatever he's doing under the 5th-year option, let's just say for giggles that's 18, right? So that'd be 25. So what you essentially have in that case is a 5-year, $115 million deal, according to some people's math, not really mine, because this year's money is already guaranteed use the fifth-year option, that's going to be guaranteed too. So to me, it's no, he's signing a 3-year, $30 million extension on top of the money that he's already due. That's a bargain. That's a bargain when you think about the next 5 years in totality, and you could give him some of that money now as a bonus and end up spreading that out over the life of the contract. And what happens is his per year goes down. T. Higgins signing and Jamar Chase, because Higgins had been on a franchise tag and Chase was in, I think, had the fifth year. Somehow both of their cap numbers went down because they spread the money out over those next 5 years or so. So the 4 or 5 years. So it could possibly help the Jaguars in the short term and possibly in the long term if they do something early with Trayvon Walker. That's why I don't add any value to it unless you hear it from somebody that's super, super credible. But it is nice to kind of get a little bit of a gauge on what someone is worth. There are a lot of people in Atlanta that believes he's worth a whole lot more than, say, people from around the NFL that want to talk about how good he is and then at the same time give you nothing but a third-round pick for him. It is absolutely ludicrous. That's why I say it's lying season, man. It's also lying season in the draft. Nobody knows what anybody's going to do, not even me. And if you know what your team is going to do, you might guess it and you might end up right. But if you know exactly what they're thinking and know what they're going to do, that would mean you would have to know what the 4 teams in front of them are going to do too. And that's what makes being a draft prognosticator so hard. You can have an idea of what the Jaguars would do, but then it could change because the person that you have them taking could go before they have a chance to pick. No one knows what their order is, their board, or their contingency action is. And I've always said that if you did, that is a red flag because you should not know. And then they would have operation security problems like they have in the past where everyone knew exactly what they were doing before they did it. I can tell you what, sometimes in hindsight, you can answer your own questions when you're wondering, what are they thinking? I didn't argue with people about what I believe the Jaguars were thinking about the new Jaguars brass, staff, back office, front office, what they were thinking about the guys that are there right now. I would never get into that because I told you, I don't know. But I will tell you what I thought, and what I thought is they needed an influx of talent at every single spot on the offensive line. Starters, floor, wall, ceiling, plumbing. I said the Jags needed to add 4 or 5 offensive linemen to their group. Well, they've added 4. There's another signing just today. We'll discuss that and more in the final segments on why there was no need to argue on what they were thinking, because now that you see what they have done, they showed you exactly what they were thinking. We'll talk about that and more in our third and final segment here of Locked On Jaguars.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. What were the Jags thinking? What did Liam Cohen, what does James Gladstone, what does all of these guys think about the roster? Well, they're going to tell you the parts that they don't like. Nah. I mean, we saw Liam Cohen shake Christian Kirk's hand, pat him on the chest, and tell him about Coach Whipple, guys that they had in common that they were both close with, and everyone says he's keeping Kirk. And then they said that they were going to talk to Trevor Lawrence and get Trevor Lawrence's opinion on everything, and they said, well, Lawrence is very close with Ingram and he's very close with Kirk. They're going to keep them too. Wrong. Both guys gone, right? So what does that tell you? It's a money issue to a certain extent, but when you think about the people that they replaced them with, it was also a talent issue because Diami Brown is a bigger, more ascending target. He's also probably faster. I believe he is faster. He is a deep threat. He has a nice catch radius at 6'1". They got better at that position. He's a run after the catch guy, and he's very durable. And he's an ascending player in their eyes. He was second in the playoffs with like 14 catches for almost 200 yards and a touchdown in the playoffs. So they got a guy playing at a very high level in the biggest games of the year at the very end of his contract. And you know what? One of those games was against Tampa, and Liam Cohen had a ringside seat, front row seat. So therefore, you know what they did? They said, we're going to get him. And they got him. He also played well against the Detroit Lions in the divisional round of the playoffs. And that's a good team with a good measuring stick to see what kind of player he is. The Jaguars went out and got him. Then they go and sign 2 tight ends. One they're familiar with, well, both actually they're familiar with because of their the spots that they had coached in. But those guys are complete tight ends with different size profiles than the move tight end of 6'2.5" Evan Ingram, right? Who doesn't block. And if you've listened to Liam Cohen, you know they want everybody to block. Then the thing that they did that was music to my ears, or they keep doing, they keep signing offensive line. Today, just today, the Jaguars signed former University of Florida offensive lineman Big Fred Johnson, 6'7", 330-ish. Now, he came from Philadelphia. You say, what is he? Is he a top flight offensive lineman? No, he's not top flight offensive lineman. But he was their 7th guy. Okay. Tyler Steen was their 6th player. Here's the way this worked. If their right tackle got hurt, if Lane Johnson got hurt, I think, I may be mistaken, they either brought Fred Johnson in and let him play right tackle, or they kicked Mekhi Becton out to they would kick Becton out to right tackle and bring Tyler Steen in at right guard. If they didn't do that, if one of the interior guys got hurt, they would bring Steen in and they would move Landon Dickerson to center if Cam Jurgens was out. And they played Tyler Steen and Landon Dickerson spot. If the right guard was injured, and they just plug, if Becton was out, they just plug Steen into his spot. But interestingly, if the left tackle was injured, they would also always bring in Fred Johnson because Tyler Steen can't play left tackle, or he doesn't play left tackle. So he was the 7th guy. He was like the swing tackle who also has guard experience. If he's good enough for the Philadelphia Eagles and Coach Stoutland, he's good enough for me here to take the spot of somebody like Cole Van Lannon, or take the spot of Javon Foster, who's 25 years old at the end of March, at the beginning of his 2nd year, where there's not a whole lot of upside there. I'm not writing the kid off, but I am saying they brought 4 veterans in here, and they still may add 1 or 2. In fact, I'll go right here to X. I'll go right here to the X app, and somebody goes, Wig, it's happening. They're putting belt to asses. Black man has said, everybody that played the offensive line last year has been put on notice. It's happening, Wig, belt to asses, and they still may draft 2 offensive linemen. They just might draft 2 offensive linemen, and they might do it on day 2. I'm not even ruling out day 1 at this point. They were dead serious when they said they needed to improve that offensive line. I think most people thought that they needed to just go sign if you look at one of my wish lists, they signed everybody who's the top free agent at that position, and that's not reality, and it doesn't work that way. But they fixed it from the bottom. They fixed it from the middle. That's the way that they've done it. You know, they can fix the roof a little bit, but they're fixing the floors, and they have totally changed the value of that position group, and they're not done yet. So what were they thinking when they saw this team? Well, Trevor needed a security force, and Trevor needed people to throw the ball to that just weren't guys putting up numbers, but guys who could actually have a bigger impact and make more plays during these actual games. They also added a safety and a defensive back, a corner. What did they do? They added the feistiness to that group. Now, Doug Peterson said last year at training camp, if he could get one player to go in a street fight with him, he picked Darnell Savage. Darnell Savage is still on the team. I don't know what they feel about him, but I tell you what, they went out and got 2 junkyard dogs in Eric Murray and Jordan Lewis to add to the activity of the back end of that team. They need to get people off the field on 3rd down. They have not addressed linebackers yet. Somebody said they really, really desperately need a linebacker. I don't know if they desperately need one, but they got Foye Oluokun, and I believe either Devin Lloyd or Ventrez Miller will start next to him, and then the other one that doesn't start is the swing guy, and then they still got Chad Muma. So could they improve that area? Sure, but within their defensive scheme, I think they look at those guys and say, no, they got some things that we can work with. They may add one player. I thought they were going to add Isaiah McDuffie, but he ended up re-signing back with Green Bay. McDuffie played at Boston College and then was in Miami and then was in Green Bay with Anthony Campanile. So that's why I thought that would be something to do that would be on the cheap that could also help special teams, but they weren't able to get it done. He was retained by Coach Pisaccia and that crew up in Green Bay. What else do they need to do? Well, James Gladstone says that they're going to leave room for those draft picks. They got 11 of them, right? This makes it not necessarily something that they have to address on multiple occasions in the draft with them signing Fred Johnson. So what this means is, I think you see, this is just in case now, just in case we can't get the guy that we want, or just in case we're not able to address it. They could start camp right now with the people that they have, and it's an increase in competition. It's an increase in play on the interior of the offensive line. Their depth is better, and then they could go and start with the developmental part of the game and try to see where these guys fit in. But they could also still add someone in the draft. So if you want to know the answer to what were they thinking, like all those arguments we were having 3 or 4 weeks ago, where they just showed you. And it lines up with a lot of the things that we thought. They needed to be better at receiver. They needed to be way better on the offensive line. They needed to basically retool and reshuffle the way that room looks. They needed to change the way the tight end room looks. They got rid of the quote unquote move tight end for a couple of variations of complete players who can block and catch. And that's a poker tell. And what I mean by that is, you knew when Evan Ingram in the game, he wasn't there to be blocking nobody. And if he was, it wasn't going to be very good, right? So they've sort of changed the complexion and the look and the outlook of this team in those areas. Those areas happen to be the ones that we here on Locked On Jaguars thought needed fixing the absolute most. That's why I want you to tune in every day, man, because we got receipts. We keep receipts here. I shared on the X app some early notes and wish lists. I had Patrick McCarry on one, and I had Fred Johnson on the other. I missed all the other players, but what I did get right were the positions. In fact, on one, I had them taking 4 offensive linemen in free agency, a wide receiver, and a safety. And they did it, right? Just weren't the same people that I thought. So the what were they thinking we had right, the who they were thinking they could get, I don't think we did so well on it, but we weren't supposed to do well because we don't work in that building. You can do well by listening to the Locked On NFL Draft. If you want to know who the Jaguars are going to be able to take, and like I said, it's not who they're going to pick, but who they're going to be able to take and what their ranking is. There's no 2 people that I trust better to tell you that than Coach Keith Sanchez and Damian Parsons over on Locked On NFL Draft. Make sure you find it, listen to it every day, and make it your second listen after you listen to Locked On Jaguars, wherever you get your podcast, whether you watch or listen. Watch and listen again tomorrow because I'll be here with some more stuff. Until then, you guys take care. Thank you. I always appreciate the time that you take every single day to listen to this podcast. It means the world to me, and we appreciate it. We don't take your presence lightly. We absolutely do appreciate you here on Locked On Jaguars. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.